Director of OneVoice Europe. It's an international charity working with Israel and Palestine to achieve that two-state solution. Joins us from our Westminster studio, as you see. John, a very good afternoon to you. In terms of drawing up an agenda for these two leaders, what's at the very top, do you think, for the two of them?
Well, I think there's very different priorities for each Prime Minister. For Prime Minister Netanyahu, he's under more pressure domestically than we've seen for a very long time. He's currently being investigated, and right-wing coalition partners are pushing pretty hard for more and more advances in the West Bank with the settlement enterprise, whereas Theresa May, as we know here, is facing one of the biggest challenges any UK Prime Minister has ever faced by negotiating Brexit. So what we're seeing really is a need to try and look at this relationship transactionally from both sides. And I think that's a mistake. I think there's important principles that the Prime Minister needs to stick to for long-standing British positions on a two-state solution and an end to this conflict.
Well, we're told she's expressed concerns about the settlements, the new buildings that have been going up or will go up in land which is claimed by Palestinians. So in terms of the principle, that's been adhered to by the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, look, no one knows what goes on behind closed doors. It's important that Theresa May did say in the on-camera sort of comments that we saw, the opposition to settlements and support for a two-state solution. Interestingly, Prime Minister Netanyahu did not respond by saying he supported a two-state solution, rolling back from sort of a weaving series of statements of support and then being a bit more ambiguous. I think for Great Britain, we have a lot of anniversaries coming this year with the Balfour Declaration, a centenary of a very important role that Britain played in this conflict, and 50 years since the occupation began. Things are very volatile on the ground, and I think it's really important that Britain plays this senior diplomatic role that's commensurate with its UN Security Council seat, and the way that Prime Minister May talks about Britain's role post-Brexit and doesn't seek or inadvertently achieve greater instability at a time when the Middle East more generally is going through some very volatile moments.
John, if we could just leave the peace process to one side for a second. You mentioned the sort of transactional nature of things in terms of what Theresa May, UK government, might want from the Israelis in a post-Brexit world. And when you think about Israel, it's not economically, it's not a powerhouse. I mean, there are certain sectors they do very well in. But in terms of what the UK can derive from Israel in terms of post-Brexit trade deals, I mean, it's limited, isn't it?
I don't know. I think Israel punches well above its weight with regards to security and high-tech, obviously, and these are areas which Britain has also been trying to push its relative strength with negotiations with the European Union. And Israel has definitely been a senior partner with Western countries with regards to sharing of intelligence. It's obviously geographically situated in a very important place, and its high-tech sector is, pound for pound, one of the most successful of its kind in the world. So there are, in that transactional nature, things that Britain and Israel can cooperate on. There's about £5 billion pounds with the bilateral trade, and Britain is the biggest bilateral trading partner of Israel in the European Union. But I think it needs not to be taken out of context. Israel's economy is it's dependent upon ending the conflict in the medium term. I mean, it's not viable for it to continue to be this outward-facing economy that requires a lot of dynamism, whilst at the same time it's entering the 50th year of this conflict and an occupation that really needs to end. So from Britain's perspective, and I know you're looking to broaden the conversation, I think that the role of a friend, and Britain is a friend of Israel's, is to say we want to try and have this partnership with you, we want to have strong bilateral trading agreements, but you need to understand that there is a quid pro quo, and that movement on the conflict, and particularly avoiding the kind of settlement expansion that we've seen over the last few weeks, is really important in order for that relationship to develop.
John, let's broaden the conversation to talk about Iran. The Brits, or certainly parts of British government, would like to see the deal with Iran stuck to, unlike perhaps Donald Trump, who feels it was a very bad deal. And Netanyahu, who feels like he's been around for a very long time, but has been very consistent in his criticism of Iran and any, as he would see it, appeasement of Iran. That is not an area well, there will be some common ground there, but in terms of how to deal with the threat, in quotes, posed by Iran, there are going to be different approaches taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of the areas of deep concern. I mean, we've seen violence today in Israel-Palestine, and we've seen obviously rocket testing over the weekend from the Iranians, and it's something Donald Trump campaigned very hard on. I will say that Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, has said that it was one of the sterling achievements of the Obama administration, and I know the US and the UK played significant roles in getting that agreement brokered. I don't think there should be an appetite from the British side. I'd be incredibly surprised to roll back, and I would imagine there's conversations taking place already with the United States, making clear how central that treaty is for stability in the Middle East. It's also worthwhile remembering that we always talk about domestic politics here or in Israel. There's an election this year in Iran as well, and the incumbent, Rouhani, is going to be campaigning on that deal. And he's fighting some hardliners who make Israeli and UK hardliners look positively tame. by comparison. So I think there needs to be some allowance for domestic politics. I think there also needs to be very, very clear positions by all of the negotiating partners in this pretty historic deal that the deal is not going to be rolled back on, but at the same time, missile testing and other difficult and dangerous behaviour by the Iranian regime can be dealt with as a separate pocket of issues. Benjamin Netanyahu is right to say that Iran is playing a destabilising role in the region, but we do not want to further allow this Sunni-Shia sort of division to spill over and result in more violence and instability in the region.
OK, I mean, we're giving attention to this meeting between Netanyahu and Theresa May, but the truth is, John, this is the hors d'oeuvre, isn't it? The main course is Donald Trump.
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting, some things never change. So, even in conversations with the FCO and with diplomats when Barack Obama was president, it was the same mantra. Well, we're waiting to hear what the US policy is going to be. And that's been the reality for over 50 years of diplomacy in the Middle East. What's changed, obviously, is that the person who's occupying the White House is a very different individual to any previous presidents. And it's really unclear as to what he's going to do on this. There's been some very mixed messages. He's appointed some people who are very, very sort of hardline supporters of the Israeli right wing. His nomination for ambassador is far further to the right than Benjamin Netanyahu himself is. But interestingly, they then issued, the White House issued a statement last week that was a little more mealy-mouthed around settlements than he had been up until this point. I think anybody who tries to tell you definitively what's going to happen next week when Trump and Netanyahu sit down is being disingenuous. It's like a lot of things with the Trump presidency. It's a completely new game, and we're going to have to wait and see how this transpires. But it's incredibly important with that sort of uncertainty that Britain doesn't lose sight of its role and tries to play a kind of a position of ballast and stability as things no doubt get much more rockier in 2017.
Yeah, it's a world of uncertainty, that's for sure. Actually, I've just been struck by the fact that in 2022 we've not seen a tweet from Donald Trump yet, which is pretty unusual, isn't it? John Lyndon is Executive Director of OneVoice Europe. John, thanks a lot.